where they would be, what they would do. And we were also monitoring what was happening across the country. It seems to be quite a bit of a playbook, what's happening in all of our major cities, similar looting, similar burning, similar strategies and crowd movements of these criminals. And so I was talking to chiefs across the country in regards to their assets, their resources, and how they were being used. And it became clear to me that the case had been made that this was not a First Amendment protest, that this was a synchronized strategy to loot, burn, and destroy, and not express your First Amendment rights. And once that became very clear, because I think there's a clear distinction. We want to protect that sacred right of First Amendment expressions. And once we knew we crossed that fine line, we clearly crossed it. There was no gray area, in my opinion, based on the actions of the crowd, that more resources would be needed, not only for outer perimeter, but for patrolling for our cops, Chicago cops, and for a relief factor. You can only work cops for so long before their patience wears thin and they make mistakes. So we wanted to have an opportunity to build in a relief factor for our cops. They went a long time yesterday without eating anything. We gave them water, but they were on the line fighting a good fight to protect our city.
Superintendent, the next question is for you and for the mayor, and it has to do with exactly what you're talking about, which is resources. I've got several questions from my colleagues as to whether you feel that we had enough officers to deal with what is going on, specifically from Phil Rogers and WMAQ. One of the things he mentions, for example, is that we saw repeated instances last night where people were looting within blocks of where police had been marshaled, but there was no response to the looting sites. For example, the Curlis car dealership on Rush and the Gold Coast. Is the reason for this that it was simply officers were just stretched too thin? You didn't have enough people to respond to everything?
I want to be firm in this answer. Let's put the blame of what happened last night squarely on the people that did the looting.
That's right.
Let's put the blame right there and leave it there.
That's right.
Let's don't switch the blame to the cops who showed great restraint and professionalism and did all they can to protect First Amendment rights because you chose to come and destroy. That's who has the blame, and they need to account for it. They need to answer for it, and I'm not going to answer for them. Shame on them.
But did you have enough resources?
Yes.
How do you feel about that, Mayor? We've heard reports that there was a decision made to not activate the gang and the tactical unit.
No, that's just completely and utterly false. And look, I think the superintendent's 100% right. It's always easy to second guess when you're not in the moment, when you don't actually have the complete facts. And in what we saw last night, and the harm that caused, and lingers today and will in the future, let's put the blame where the blame squarely belongs. And the people who decided that they were going to choose this moment in an organized fashion to loot and pillage and burn and destroy. That's the group that we need to be focused on.
Now, in terms of how the resources were deployed, in some instances we saw officers in not the full riot gear, but partial. In other cases, we were seeing the officers just in their regular uniforms. Why the discrepancies, and how were the decisions made on how to send who where?
Well, again, I'll let the superintendent answer. It's not a discrepancy, with due respect. I'll stop myself and let the superintendent.
We were equipped for a peaceful protest. We transitioned to gear to protect us from bottles and rocks when that happened. And then we transferred our strategies from fixed posts to mobile posts as the looters ran throughout downtown. And we did our job in a professional manner, period.
What are the rules of engagement in situations like that? Because as you mentioned, and I think everyone saw it, there was tremendous how those, how those decisions are made in terms of how to engage or not engage.
Sure, yeah, we were obviously in complete control when we used pepper spray. We did not use tear gas, we used pepper spray, primarily when the crowds became violent, not just destruction of property and looting, but when they became violent. It's a less lethal tool that we have in law enforcement. It helps us prevent our officers from having to use deadly force. And that's what we want. This was a textbook escalation of police enforcement. We didn't over-enforce, we didn't under-enforce. I think we hit the right notes using pepper spray when needed, when violence escalated, or when people were armed with hammers and bringing shovels to what they wanted to describe as a peaceful protest, but it was never. Who brings a shovel to a peaceful protest? Who brings a hammer to a peaceful protest? No one does. No one does.
And, I want to ask you a question for the mayor as well. It's related to something that Alderman Riley mentioned, which was, people coming in with U-Hauls, and they clearly had a plan of where they were going to go. Do we believe that there were organized groups, call it anarchists, whatever, that specifically came into Chicago last night with the intent of causing the destruction that they did?
I think there's no question about that. Watching various areas of the city and how there clearly was coordination. They were clearly listening to radio traffic, the number of U-Haul trucks that magically showed up in front of stores, car caravans that dropped people off who broke into windows and then were hustling the goods out into the backs of the cars. Absolutely, it was organized. There's no question whatsoever about that.
Have you been able to identify some of those groups already?
The investigation of that continues, and when it's appropriate, we will share that information.
You were mentioning the police scanners being monitored and that kind of thing. We had some reports, I'm not sure if it's true, about Chicago police radio being jammed by music, and that was hindering communication and response time. Is this correct? Is that really happened?
Well, I think that there were some inappropriate people that were sporadically on the lines, but it didn't hinder any communications with the officers that were in the field and the different deployments.
In terms of damage assessment, has that already been made? Is it still
No,
in process?
that's going to be a process that's ongoing. We are working actively with businesses all over the city. And keep in mind, this stretch from Lakeview all the way south to 22nd Street and beyond. So we're still in the assessment phase today, helping businesses board up and take stock. But it'll be some time before we have a true understanding of the magnitude of the problem.
A couple of questions regarding the curfew. We've heard from some people that say that the combination of raising the bridges, shutting down the CTA, and then instituting the curfew basically left them trapped down.
Totally, utterly false. And the proof is in the pudding. People were roving all over the downtown area, by foot, by car, and by other means. No one was trapped. The LaSalle Street Bridge was open the entire time. And again, look at what happened. If they were trapped, we would have seen an isolated area of problem. We didn't see that. There was a tremendous mobility to our detriment.
At the time that the curfew was instituted, the police informed the crowds on the street, or how
Yes,
did they receive that?
both. We did, they informed the crowds on the street. We did reverse 911 and sent out text messages. We put the information out through the media as well and social media.
You mentioned that there were 240 arrests related to looting. Do we know
That's
the
right.
total number of arrests for violating the curfew, and were people given time to?
We don't have those distinctions yet. We'll put that out as soon as we have those distinctions of which were for disorderly conduct, which was the overarching charge, and just drill down to which ones were curfew. Most were obviously property damage when we caught it on camera and we were able to find those suspects real time, and but others may have been for curfew as well.
Now, we were discussing the alternate routes that are trying to be figured out for the marches that have been originally planned for today. What are those routes? Do we have them?
I think that's still a work in progress. We don't have those details yet.
Are we basically saying that there's no more protests downtown, period, or just for right now?
Well, look, we fiercely guard people's First Amendment rights. But in light of what happened last night, we also fiercely guard people's rights to their liberty, their property, and their employment.
Are you concerned that with the downtown area shut down, these groups are simply going to follow the organized protesters into whatever that alternate route is, or into other neighborhoods, and then move in those other areas around the city?
Look, based on what we've seen across the country and other cities, and as I mentioned, I've been in frequent contact with my fellow mayors, I think we have to anticipate that, unfortunately, some people are going to continue to try to foment violence and chaos, and we have to be on our guard as we are for that. So we are going to be diligent everywhere in the city to make sure that we can keep our communities and our neighborhoods safe.
How are you planning on enforcing the
Let me also just call on President Foreman.
Michelle, I want to add on to that. That is not going to happen. My phone is going crazy. Pastor Moss's phone is going crazy. Jamal's phone is going crazy. That's not going to happen. We'll not have violence in our communities. We won't.
Have we gotten any reports of additional looting on the south side happening throughout the day? I've been receiving messages, nothing confirmed of instances of looting.
We heard a report in an area in the south side just as we were walking up. I don't know if we have any update on that, but officers were rolling en route to determine if the rumors were true, and if so, to take action. Unfortunately, there's a lot of rumor and innuendo that's floating around, but we are going to be prepared. We are prepared, and officers will respond accordingly in the event that there is any effort to loot anywhere in the city.
Last two questions. How will you enforce the restrictions in terms of loop access? You say it'll be shut down.
I'm sorry, say it again.
How will you enforce the restrictions to loop access?
If people, well, what we've said is this: if you are an essential worker who works downtown, or you otherwise live in the area, you're free to go about your business. But the areas that we marked off are shut down otherwise, and we will aggressively enforce it.
Now, obviously the city has been preparing to partially reopen
Yes.
this coming Wednesday. Now we have all of these businesses downtown that just yesterday, early afternoon, were setting up their patios, were getting ready,
Yes.
and now they're having to board up with
Yes.
them. Is this going to postpone the ability of the downtown area to be able to reopen along with the rest of the city? Are you planning to postpone this, or?
Well, what I'll say, and Alderman Riley shared this with me earlier, and I think he may have said it here today. It's a terrible thing that after being shut down for so long, and these businesses were preparing for opening on June 3rd, putting out patio furniture and doing other things to get themselves ready, that now instead of a moment of celebration, what they're doing is experiencing a moment of despair. I don't know what, and I think it's going to take some time for us to assess what the impact is going to be on those businesses all across the city that we're preparing. Certainly in the downtown area, there has been a negative impact, and we're in conversations with those businesses to determine what that will mean for them this week and into the future. I'm in conversation with Dr. Arwady, our Commissioner of Public Health, Superintendent Brown, and others, of course, and we will make a determination whether or not we can go forward on June 3rd as planned. But we haven't made that determination yet. Sure, thank you.
Question from Shia at Politico. Why do you think Chicagoans are responding differently to George Floyd's death than Laquan McDonald's? And does this exacerbate the city's
Well, it shouldn't exacerbate the racial divide. I mean, I think you heard some very passionate voices today talking about how we should not allow that to happen, that we ought to use the energy and the passion that we saw from people who were using it for ill to use it for good. And I believe in that. You know, part of the reason I've been so emotional today is it's devastating to me to see young women, particularly young men and women, particularly black folks who look like me, who growing up in circumstances like mine, wasting their God-given talent instead of using that talent to uplift their voices in a positive direction. I challenge them to channel that same energy to do good in their communities. We can salvage something from this moment. We could absolutely focus exclusively on what we have lost. I choose to, and I hope others will choose to use this to focus on what we can gain. And that list is equally as long.
Question from Vivian McCall at WBEZ. What is your reaction to the ACLU lawsuit that claims a broad citywide curfew invites arbitrary and discriminatory enforcement?
I don't know that there has been a lawsuit. I know that there's been conversation about it. Entering into a curfew and any of the decisions that I and we have made over these last 24 hours is not something that I enter into lightly. I'm a lawyer. I know the law, but I also know it's critically important that we enforce the rule of law. As the superintendent rightly said, we cannot allow lawlessness to prevail. And the measures that we have taken, and maybe measures that we are yet to take, are ones that we are thoughtful and considered about. They are very similar to steps that have been taken in other cities across the country. And with due respect to the ACLU, I know what we need to do to make this city safe, and I'm going to make those calls every single time.
Question from Tribe. Everyone who participated in yesterday's protest wasn't down there to loot or vandalize property. Does your new restriction on protesting in the downtown area go against people's First Amendment right to lawfully assemble?
No, it does not.
Themselves?
No, it does not. And as all of us have acknowledged, there were people that were there who did engage in peaceful protests, and I think that was the vast majority. But there were people who were there to engage in acts of violence and criminal conduct, and it's for them that we are protecting the rest of us against.
Question for Superintendent Brown from Dana Koslov at CBS2. You say what we saw last night is nothing that we anticipated. How could you not anticipate that after what we saw in Minneapolis on Friday?
That's not what I said. I said no one could anticipate someone would use the First Amendment sacred right that we all uphold as a ruse for criminality. That's what I said, and I stand by that statement.
Question from Amy Jacobson at WIND for Superintendent Brown. We all watched in horror as the female police officer was tackled and dragged through the street. How is she doing?
Bumps and bruises, but doing okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you leave, if I may ask one last question regarding what I was just asking about the looting on the south side. The last couple of days I've gotten several messages that are specifically referring to looting between 87th and 95th Streets on Western, the Walmart, the Sam's Club, and several other stores in that area. Is that something that you were referring to about
Yes.
finding out on the
Yes, and we'll update you as soon as we get back and get that update. Thank you.